You're listening to the Confident Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Gavin, former professional photographer turned professional encourager. I'm an intuitive life and business mentor focused on strengthening courage and confidence for heart-centered creatives. These heart-centered creatives desire to make an impact and an income through sharing their heart with the world. This podcast is dedicated to helping us creatives activate more courage within ourselves so we can experience more memories, achieve more milestones, and make more money. In addition to empowering stories, this show will also include practical, actionable strategies from thought leaders, influencers, impact makers, and my own personal experience. If you are passionate about the areas of intentionally living, prioritizing passion, choosing courage, as well as some soulful business strategy, spirituality, and some self-mastery, you, my friend, are in the right place. You ready to play? Hey friends, back with another super awesome interview episode today, and I'm so pumped for this one. This one has been on the books for the last 4 months. I can't wait to share it with you. It's with the one and only Jason Goldberg. He is one of my favorite humans on the planet, and even though I think I say that every time, I mean it every time. He is just such a great human and has so much to share with the world. I have been lucky enough to be mentored by him and learn from him and been in the sort of inner circle with him. And I cannot even begin to tell you all of the gifts that I have had just by knowing him and seeing him show up in the world. So I'm super excited to get into this with you. I'll give you a little bit of background about Jason. He says he was a geek turned entrepreneur turned international and transformational speaker. He's a trainer, a coach, an author, and a host. Also a former rapper. He loves to combine personal growth and comedy. He does speaking and trainings and workshops, and he really helps people open their minds and transform their lives. In his book, Prison Break, you may remember I mentioned on the episode with Stephen Kellogg, his humor is just such a great lighthearted way to understand this transformation work in a way that's not so like heavy and excavating, but such powerful little distinctions that shift so many things. So you will also see in the show notes the international best-selling book on self-leadership called Prison Break, Jason's book. He has gifted it to every one of our listeners. So be sure to download that. And also in the show notes, you will find Jason's How to Build a Competition-Proof Business ebook as well, which is jam-packed with so much valuable information. It was like, when I first saw it, I was blown away. It was amazing. So Jason is one of the most kind-hearted and just so powerful in his presence, and really just comes from like the deepest level of integrity and service. And I think one of the things that's my most favorite about Jason's work is that he keeps things so simplistic, but it's just such a powerful shift in perspective, the way that you hear him speak about things, the way that he serves his clients, the way that he makes his impact in the world. And his just spirit is just so great. And so it's so refreshing to have during this transformational work. So we're going to dive into the interview. It's so fun. I would love to know your biggest takeaways. We get into all the work of a creative heart and why it's so important to have the confidence and courage to show up and do your work in the world. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hey friends, I am so excited for this conversation with my favorite human on the planet, Mr. Jason Goldberg. You have heard me mention him before. You have heard me share about his book, Prison Break, and all the things. So this is an absolute honor and privilege. I'm so happy to share this with you.
Well, the honor and privilege is mine. And, for the people at home that are listening that don't know about this, your son is a thug. So we determined today that your son is a thug and he needs rehabilitation and some gang intervention because he's out there doing some pretty bad things in the world. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yep, I love it. That's why you're here, actually, because you can help him with that. It's perfect.
That's what I'm here. Prison Break. We got the intervention. This is perfect. It makes sense.
I know. Yes. For those of you that don't know, he broke his foot, and my brother is a bit of a jokester and told him instead of saying he broke it while he was doing laundry, he didn't look right. And he was supposed to make up some story about, not being being in the place where he could save a old lady being mugged. And He quickly messed that up and made it into a story of he was mugging the old lady. So here we are. Prison break it is.
Oh my God, it's the best. And he's 13, you said?
Yeah, he's 13. He adores you, by the way. He thinks we're like best friends because you're always on. And yep. And he's like, oh yeah, that's Jason? Oh yeah, I know. I'm like,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
you know. Yep.
I love it.
So just to wait, when we hang out, he'll be like your best buddy, your little sidekick. So
Wait, we'll go run the streets together.
yeah. So we know what to do. It's good.
I mean, I was the former rapper. At least I have some street cred.
I was just going to say that. Like, well, I mean, you did have that. So I love it. That's awesome. So yeah, so you are one of my favorite humans, and I just love sharing your message, sharing your stuff. But for people that don't know you, can you give us those little, I don't really like the origin, like, how'd you get here thing? But I do think it's important to give some people context. So how did you end up in this space of sort of helping people free themselves, and where'd you start?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it started before I knew it was starting, and it's just me being such a prisoner in my life and being such a victim in my life. So I didn't know that I was preparing myself. My sole curriculum was preparing me to help other people, but it didn't feel like that growing up. It just felt like I was an angsty teenager who would punch holes in walls and be sad and cry and be depressed all the time. So thanks, universe. So I was raised by a single mother. I'm an only child. And a single Jewish mother, right? So she can hear everything we're saying right now.
Yep.
We're in Florida.
Hey, Mom.
And, hey, Mom. You're probably on her payroll, and she's probably like you as a spy to see what's going on in my world. Now I'm realizing I haven't called her in a few days, and now I'm feeling guilty. Thanks.
Yep. You're welcome.
Oh, this is amazing. So yeah, born and raised in Florida, was a very, all kidding kind of aside, I was a very stressed, anxious, depressed, angry, especially angry kid. And it kept getting worse and worse, through teen years and even into my 20s of having suicidal ideation and just really just having a sense of heaviness follow me everywhere I went in my life. Doesn't mean I didn't have moments of joy. I mean, like anybody, any human experience. But when I look back, it feels like when I look at school, middle school, high school, even into college, even into adulthood, it felt like a lot of heaviness. And that was something I kind of got used to. And it wasn't just heaviness in my life emotionally, but as you know, I was also very heavy physically. And I'd been a chunky kid my entire life. And when I was 15 years old, I was 250 pounds. And in my late 20s, when I was in my last corporate job, which was in technology, I was in tech for about 15 years before I became an entrepreneur. In 2009, in my late 20s, I had gotten up to 332 pounds and was just really dying a slow death. I mean, there's just, at that, to be that age and to be that heavy, it wouldn't have been out of the realm of possibility that I wouldn't make it to 40, which I just turned 40 earlier this month. So had I not started making changes, I don't know that I would still be here on this earth today, which is weird. I've actually never said that out loud, and that feels really crazy to say.
Yeah.
So I did that, and it was really around that time. It was in 2009, and I kind of talk about this in the story in the first chapter of my book, Prison Break, is I had this kind of wake up call moment where I could no longer blame my circumstances or blame my boss or blame my employees or blame my coworkers or blame the White House or blame society or whatever else, blame my mother, whatever it was. I couldn't do that anymore. I had to take personal responsibility. I had to start practicing what I now call self-leadership. Back then I didn't have a word for it. And that was where the change really started happening. And I started diving into personal growth. It was a love-hate relationship diving into it because I didn't get it. Yep. It's like if you decide all of a sudden after speaking nothing but English for 29 years that you want to learn French, you don't pick up a French book and go, oh, cool. Well, this all makes sense. Yeah, I speak French fluently now. I got it. I'm done. The work's done. Yep. So for me, it was very much like I dove into personal growth and hated it because it didn't make sense. It didn't, my brain didn't connect. I remember the first personal growth book I read was Think and Grow Rich. And did you ever read this one?
Oh my gosh, that was your entryway?
I know what nobody told me. I had no guidance. Where were you?
Oh,
Where were
friends.
you?
Friends. No.
This book was so frustrating to me, Carrie, because throughout the entire book, he's doing this thing where he keeps saying, and by now you've probably seen what I'm pointing to. That is the
I know.
I don't see it. What do you just tell me the thing? Why are you telling me this? And it goes to show that like when our brains are programmed to think that external circumstances dictate our happiness and sadness, somebody can come with the clearest message in the world saying it's your thinking, and it's like somebody speaking to you in French when you only speak English. Doesn't matter how
100%.
clear, doesn't matter how slow, doesn't matter how repetitive it is, it just doesn't land until it does. And so that was my journey, was to just try to be as open as possible to that as I was going through it. Hiring my first coach really took that to the next level, because now it wasn't me fighting with my ego and a book with pages.
Right.
I was actually getting to explore this with somebody outside of me who didn't have the same hangups about my life. I'm sure they have their own hangups. We as coaches always have our own hangups, but they just weren't the same as his.
Yep.
So it worked out well. And so I did that, got into, like I said, entrepreneurship, had a couple companies that I launched. One was an executive transportation company. One was in partnership with NASA and doing some technology commercialization. And then I moved into speaking and coaching and things like that, kind of the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, because I had experienced this transformation. I had lost over 130 pounds. I had really started feeling like I was a creator in my world and a self-leader in my world, and not at the whim of circumstance as often. Still happens. It's not about immunity. It's about navigation. But feeling like, okay, cool. This is awesome. I love this. And I love speaking, and I love performing, and I love helping people. How can I get paid to do all those things and continue my own learning and evolution? And so that's kind of how I tripped and fell headfirst into coaching and speaking and all that stuff.
I love it. I love it. I actually never knew that's how you started either, which I think is fascinating. And that's always my question, right? Especially because we're dealing with a lot of creatives, and I personally think we're all creative. That's another story. But I think it's fascinating because there are so many people that go from corporate into entrepreneurship. But I think what's really the most powerful is when we access our own transformation, that's how we're serving and that's what we're talking from. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I know there were a lot of things that I was interested in, but I didn't have personal experience with. So I found myself like getting in my head, and then I was in all this fear, and then I was like, I'm not good enough. But it wasn't necessarily the highest place of service for me, because I wasn't embodying that. I wasn't, it was interesting and it was fun, and I'm a teacher at heart, but I didn't actually connect with it. So I love that you came out of the gate with like, no, this is my transformation. This is how I can help people, and how am I going to make money? Like, I didn't even know it was a thing. That's amazing. You knew that.
Well, the thing is I knew it was a thing only because I had hired a coach. So I knew that somebody was paying something for something.
But how did you decide you were going to hire a coach?
So that's great. I love that story. I love that question. So it was really funny. So my very first coach was a guy named Jacob Sokol. Love him. He's become a dear friend. And he's a guy who also had an IT background, also was a big hip hop head like me. And so we clicked like right away. But even how I found him was really interesting. So do you know Brian Johnson and like Philosopher's Notes and all that stuff? Are you familiar with that stuff? Mm-hmm. Oh my God, you would love this. Okay, so it's like Brian Johnson's this guy. He was like a tech entrepreneur, decided he was going to sell his company and go like meditate in the Himalayas and read hundreds of personal growth books. And that's what he did. And then he came back and he started creating these little like 6-page summaries, cliff notes of all of the best personal growth books in the entire world. And he created this company. Yeah, it's still around. He created this company called Entheos. Now it's just Brian Johnson. So I think it's like brianjohnson.me, and it's like $10 a month, and you get unlimited access to all these MP3 summaries and written summaries of all these amazing books. It's incredible.
Amazing.
So you would love that. Yeah, you would love that. But what he was doing though with Entheos, it's changed a lot now, but Entheos became a thing where it was just the book things. And then it became a thing where he was bringing in outside teachers to come in and teach classes on how to optimize your life, right? Whether it was health or life or relationships or whatever. And so they would do these things called symposiums, where essentially virtual conferences, like summits, as we would call them now, right, with a bunch of different interviews. Sure. And this guy, Jacob Sokol, was doing a symposium that was called "I Kind of Want to Be a Coach." That was the name of the symposium. And yeah, it was amazing. And he interviewed like 30 different people. And this is the first time ever that I heard of Steve Chandler and Sean Stevenson and like a bunch of these people that have, had now or later on became my friends and mentors and everything else. I didn't know who any of these people were. So I start listening to some of these interviews. I bought the access so I could listen to these interviews. And as I'm listening, I'm like, I think I kind of want to be a coach. So the title was perfect. And so that's when and then I reached out to Jacob directly. And then Jacob was the person that I ended up hiring first. So it was this thing of like, yeah, that feels right. Like getting that information and noticing what coaches do and the stories they were telling. It was like, yeah, I want some of that. Like I want to do that. But don't think for a second that I had like no fear about it, because even when I started doing it, this was off the tail end of 2 other startups I had done. And I was terrified. And I did this thing where for the first 6 months that I was a coach, and I'm putting coach in quotes for those who you're listening and not watching, when I first decided I was going to be a coach and started putting myself out there, what I did do early on was start to put myself out there What I also did though, was it was such an intellectual exercise. Talk about embodiment. It was such an intellectual exercise that I changed my niche 5 times in the first 6 months that I was doing the thing. And I was like, no, it's this one. And then a week later, I was like, no, wait, that one's more profitable. Or no, wait, that one people will take more seriously. And I wasn't coaching anybody. I wasn't doing any of the work. So
oh my God.
So while it looked like I was taking action, it was fear-based action. It was what Jim Carrey says. Jim Carrey says, so many people live their lives in fear disguised as practicality. And that's what I did for the first 6 months. It was fear disguised. Oh, if I just do some videos and I just keep changing my niche, eventually something will stick. And it didn't.
Oh my God. I also never do that. Right. And that's what I did the first year, because I had been in photography I was probably 5 or 6 years in when people started asking me how I had my business and all that. And then I discovered the coaching world, which, to be honest, I can't even really remember how I found it, but I remember I saw Marie Forleo and I was like, this is a thing. Meanwhile,
she was one of my first. She was my first because she was on video and she was having fun. I'm like, you're allowed to have fun?
Like, yes. Permission, right? Permission. Yes. So I had found the coaching world, and then I signed up for B School in 2015. Wow. Didn't finish it because at that point I was still in photography and I wanted to create a blog or a resource for like real life stories of motherhood and entrepreneurship. But then I got divorced, or I had been divorced, and my business had to be priority and whatever. So I sort of like shelved it, but it was the same thing where I would listen to a podcast or I'd watch a video and I'd be like, I'm going to do that. 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 And then I was like, you're doing nothing. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, when I first started, I really wanted to, you'll think this is so funny given our work. Yeah. I wanted to be a confidence coach for creatives. Right. Yeah. And so then the one coach that I had invested in first was like, you can't do that. That's not a thing. You had a business, so you have to be a business coach. And that's when I started trying on everybody else's outfits and saying, well, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do this. But for me, it's just like you, it's always been about that inner transformation and really coming home to your heart and accessing your own courage and your own creativity to do it your way, right? So years later, here we are back into the confidence and courage. So it's great. It's, all those life lessons come full circle. So good. Yeah, I had no idea.
If you stay in the game long enough and you're aware enough, you will come back to your heart. And it's totally understandable to be out in this world as any kind of creative or any kind of entrepreneur and kind of become tofu a bit. And absorb the flavor of whatever it is that you have going on. And I get that, I get that. And I actually have this thing, I was talking to Tanya, who you know from my team, who we both love. Yep. I was talking about this the other day, that I realized every time I sign up with a new mentor, I take on that mentor's characteristics without even trying. Like I don't want to.
Right.
And so it actually ends up being a thing where in the beginning, I'm super excited that I'm working with a new mentor. And then I see what they're doing that's working for them. And I think, oh, all I have to do is be them and it'll work. But it's not even a conscious thing. It's like, it's a subconscious or unconscious thing. And then at some point, every time I work with them, every single time I work with a mentor, at some point, a month in, 2 months in, 3 months in, I realize I feel like I'm losing myself. And I'm like, what's going on? Why am I in such resistance to doing this work? Why am I in such resistance to implementing this new thing? And I realize it's because it's not coming through me, it's coming from me. Right. And if it's coming from me, then it's actually somebody else's stuff. If it's coming through me, then it's actually me. So it doesn't mean I throw away what the mentor said, but I go, okay, there's something about this mentor that originally attracted me to them. What is it about them that allows me to do their thing in my way? And that's me coming back to my heart. That's me coming back to center. So it sounds like it's the same process you went through with everything too. I think it's a natural thing for all of us.
100%. And it's so like, of course we're having this conversation. I met with a client yesterday in person and we had done some work together a couple of years ago. And I just was checking in with her recently and she was feeling, really stuck. And I was like, let's just get coffee and we'll chat and see, get you moving again or whatever. And our entire conversation came down to the fact that she had made a large investment with a mentor for a year and none of it was for her. Like it just wasn't. And she was trying to fit herself into this box. And I literally was like, what if this is just an expensive lesson about coming back to your heart? Like you don't have to do it this way. And she was like, what? Like, I don't have to keep going? And I was like, no, like you sure don't. Right. And it wasn't about me telling her what to do, but it was that little reminder where like, oh, we do this thing of like, we see the shiny object of like, this is success over here and this is what it looks like and it's so effortless for you, so I should do your thing. And my whole MO, which is just like you, right? Not in that way, but it's just your way is the way. That's it. And you can, yes, invest in mentors and get there faster and collapse time and do all those things, but do it through your own lens, right? Because that's the only way your success is going to come.
Absolutely. It has to be, to me, that the easiest kind of metaphor for this is like, if you want to be a world-class chef, you need to know how to work the gas stove. You need to know like which pots and pans are the best ones to conduct the right heat for the right types of food, which utensils are going to be the best for you and last the longest and have the most longevity, which is the safest, which is whatever. And then once you have all that stuff, you go in the kitchen and you play jazz and you like throw stuff against the wall and you figure it out. But it's inside the container of, here are things that I know fundamentally work in general, and now I need to do it in my way.
And that's why I love the work that you do in the world, because it resonates so much with me, where I need the framework, but I need the creativity. So I need someone to say like, here's your roadmap, and also here are all the side roads, but you can go whatever way you want, right? And I think that that's what really connected me to you, was like, I'm not going to tell you how to fit in this box, but I am going to give you the overarching thing, and you make it your own and lead with your heart and your courage. And that's how it works. And like, I think we all need that reminder all the time, you know?
Absolutely. I definitely do, for sure. Like, I'm not immune to it either. Like I have to remind myself or get reminders all the time on that stuff, for sure.
And so when you come up against that, because we all do consistently, especially with mentor after mentor, right? And learning different things. And sometimes there is a place for a strategy or specific things, but how do you navigate sort of differentiating between this is not a fit for me, or this is stretching me in a new direction?
Such a good question. So it is a matter of checking in, and there's a difference between out of alignment and foreign, right? Out of alignment and untrained. And I think a lot of people jump to out of alignment instead of realizing that it's just new and uncomfortable and weird and awkward. Right?
Yes. So much. Yes.
It's tough, right? That's really, really tough, because we have this message, and it's a message that I really am kind of sick of, is that people say like, when you're doing work that you love, it never feels like work. Come on, guys. Like, and the problem with this is that even if there are some people who feel that way, and God bless them if they do, like I love that there maybe are some people that feel that way, I think it sets up a really unrealistic expectation or unrealistic precedent for people who are trying to get into whatever creative work they want to do. And if it doesn't feel amazing and in flow right away, they start questioning themselves. Like, well, this must not be what I'm meant to do. And it's like, no, God, no, don't stop. It's not out of alignment. You're just untrained. It's like, imagine if like, we treated walking that way. And it's like, as soon as we tried to stand up at 11 months old, we fell down and we go, well, this walking thing's out of alignment for me. That's not.
Yeah, I'm out. I'm not doing it.
I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. Yeah. And it sucks. So it's a matter of remembering what it is you're doing and why it is you want to do it. Right. So for example, for me, like, and I've said this before, and I really should be careful about how I say this, because I'm probably losing potential clients by saying this, is that I don't, honestly, at the end of the day, I don't really care that much about the coaches I work with building huge businesses, right? I would love for that to happen, because that's what they want.
Yep.
But what I want them to feel less suffering around the process. I want them to be excited about the process. I want them to feel confident about the process. I want them to wake up in the morning and feel like, even on the days where it freaking sucks and it's really hard and you want to quit, you feel like, you know what, even still, I'm going to show up today, right? That's what I care about. So I don't care if I'm doing that with coaches, or I'm doing that with middle school teachers, or I'm doing that with Starbucks baristas. I don't care. I just want people to feel 5% more joy and 5% less suffering. So if that's my goal, then when I'm working on some strategy to grow the business and I'm like, this isn't working, this feels too hard, then I ask myself, first of all, are you just forgetting why you're doing this? Are you losing track? Are you focusing too much on KPIs and metrics that are just all external and all about money or whatever it is? Are you focusing on that, or are you remembering why you're here? And so if I get back into that and I remember why I'm here, and even remembering why I'm here, I look at that and say, that just doesn't feel like a method that feels good to do the thing that I want to do, to fulfill the objective I want to do, then I know that it may be out of alignment and not untrained, right?
I mean,
that's kind of how I look at that. And we were talking about this before we started recording, but like my word for this year, and it's so funny how it's come up now so much in just the first couple months of the year, my word of the year is roots, right? And
really?
Yes. So it's like getting back to my roots. And what I've realized is that the deeper and deeper I've gone and the bigger and bigger my business has grown, that the mentors that I'm talking to now, or the mentors I'm working with, they're focused on scale, right? Scale is the thing, like you nail it and scale it. And this is from my entrepreneurial world too. It was also always nail it and scale it, outside of coaching at all, just entrepreneurship. And what I realize is that scale for the sake of scale is BS. It's just, and there's so many people talking about scale. And if you really ask them, and I've had some conversations with entrepreneurs who are in scale mode. And when I just had a dinner with one last week, and we were talking about this conversation, and I kind of brought up first that I think scale for the sake of scale is BS. And she admitted, she was like, I actually don't think I want to scale. I actually think I just want to do what makes me happy. And if it means there's a cap on my income, I'm okay with that. And so like, I love that. Like, that's great. So what I have to remember is when I'm working with mentors who are focusing on scale, I need to take and this is not mine, but I love this saying, I need to take everything that's going on from high level to eye level, right?
So good.
I want to look at the stuff that like the mentor is saying at a high level. This is what you do to build a multi-million-dollar company. And for me to bring it back to eye level and say, cool, what part of that strategy aligns with what I'm trying to do and the intimacy that I still want to have and the size of the business I want to have. So it's never a waste of money. It's actually the most creative act in the world to look at somebody who says, this works when you do it my way. And for me to say, I'm going to challenge you because I'm going to do what you do in my way and still make it. Right?
Oh my God, I love that so much. Yeah. This is why you're my favorite. Yes. I just think that's like so near and dear to my heart. Right. And I especially think we can both relate from our previous endeavors as well, where like in photography, I did the same thing. I jumped in and was like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to shoot everything. And I was like taking pictures of bar mitzvahs, and I was doing like, I went to some guy's house to do pictures of their horses for his wife. And I hate horses. Like, I'm terrified of horses. And don't you know that they're like, they can sense your fear. So if you're afraid, I was like, I'm not afraid. Oh my God, I'm going to die. Like, I don't even have a long enough lens. I can't be near you. So the guy's like, I don't know why he's like jumping all over. I'm like, yeah, okay. And that for me, it's so funny because that story was a wake up call that I was like, this is a pass. Like, this does not bring me joy. I do not want to be doing this anymore. And I had to tell myself the truth that I was like, no, you can't be everything. Like, you can be one thing or two things, but you can't be everything. And so that's when I really started to sift and sort and say like, oh, like sort of like lifestyle, you know, my tagline in that business was because real life is worth documenting because I love memories and moments. And that's what's important to me. Right. So I had to tell myself the truth and say like, all out here telling me to do everything, that's a pass for me. Like, no, I can't. So I think so many creatives can relate with that for sure. Like, okay.
1,000%. Thanks for sharing that too. I love that. And horses I'm a little freaked out of horses too. I'm just going to put it out there. Any horse fans listening, I'm sorry if that means you stop following both of us. That's fine.
That's fine. It's okay. They're scary. They're big. And like, they look in different directions.
They're gorgeous, but they're scary. Like a Kardashian.
Exactly. Sort of like that. Oh my God, that's hilarious. So I would love to know, I mean, because I know your heart, I think this is obvious, but people don't know you yet. So for me and for you, connection is everything. And so when you were starting your creative business, whether it was in your first business or coaching, how was it? Was that something that you always led with first, or was it something a skill that you learned, or like, how was that for you?
Yeah, I think I felt really early on, and I think this is actually just a part of it's a part of my trauma. It's a part of my healing, was that, you know, growing up and being the fat kid and, you know, being a fat kid in school at any age is tough, but especially like in high school years, it's like, you know, I always say I was 250 pounds when I was 15, and being 15 is when kids are the most compassionate and loving.
Oh yeah. They're so nice.
High school was amazing for me. Mm-hmm. But what I realized was that since I wasn't one of the cool kids, I wasn't one of the popular kids, and I wasn't one of the hot kids, which is just weird to say. Right. But it's okay to say it when you're a kid. Anyways,
I got it.
Law enforcement's not listening. Since I wasn't one of the attractive oh God, that's even worse. Never mind. Anyways,
human.
Yeah, so I wasn't one of the cool, popular hot kids. Anyways, whatever. So what I realized though was that like I still wanted to feel enough. I still wanted to feel worthy. I wanted to feel worthy of love, worthy of attention, worthy of friendship. And so I learned early on that there were two ways that I could do that. One was humor and one was empathy. And so if I can make people laugh, everybody loves to laugh, right? So if I can make people laugh, then I'll feel connection. And with girls who didn't see me as a potential boyfriend or whatever, if I could be the one male in their life, or at least in that age group, that actually listened to their problems or like sat down and spent real quality time with them, then at least I'd feel that connection, right? And so it was humor with kind of everybody and empathy mainly with women. And that was something that I cultivated over time. So in every business that I've had, and actually this is actually what made me successful, I think, in my corporate career, is that I was in technology, and especially the last 7 years being in IT consulting. And I was an engineer who would make like best friends with all of the companies who we were servicing, right? Because we were a managed service provider. So we were like the outsourced IT department for all these small and medium-sized companies. And so it was very rare to have a technical person or an engineer come in and become friends with the CEO of the company, because usually there's like, there's no emotional intelligence or a lack of emotional intelligence. And so what I realized there was like connection was the way, right? Connection, right. It felt good, but it's also, it helps you to be more successful. So I think when I got into the coaching side, I just kept doing the same thing.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about that is that was what you had been priming yourself for your whole life. And yet it didn't become something until you were sort of in this arena when you were like, oh yeah, that's a skill set I've just cultivated forever, which I think is super important, because isn't that the way that we're like, what's so close to us and so automatic, we just discount is like, everybody does that.
Totally. And that's why I tell everybody, if you really want to know, and this is obviously, this because we teach this in the program, but that we want people to find what they're known for activating. Right? Like, what are you known for having people feel? What do people feel after leaving an interaction with you? Because that is the most valuable currency that you really have right now. And the two questions I always have people ask themselves to try to get clear on what that is look back to when you were young and look at these two different things. Number one, what did you get love and approval for? Mm-hmm. And number two, what did you get in trouble for? Mm-hmm. And those two things, one of them or both, will point to what you're naturally known for activating in people. Because I got in trouble all the time for being the class clown and talking too much and being the center of attention. And that is literally one of the pillars of how I'm able to serve now. So it makes perfect sense, and it's something to really focus on. It's huge.
Yes, in that program and known for activating, that for me was a game changer. That was the thing that totally changed everything for me, because I had been stuck in that feeling of, all of these things are, I need to know what my thing is. I need to be stuck on this. I need to like have the thing and it needs to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, then I'm not going to do it. And I think so many creatives specifically, whether it's coaching, healing, helping, whatever, if you're in this world and you have creative work to do, we struggle with a little bit of people pleasing, and we struggle with a little bit of perfection. And so I think that for me was like one of the most pivotal things and one of the greatest gifts I could have ever got from you, for sure. For me, like I just never, it was such a game changer, and I'm so grateful for it. So thanks.
Yeah, too. You're welcome. And thank you for that reflection, because I love that it was so helpful and so powerful. And it is something that like, and the other side of that distinction, so that's known for activating. The other side is that a lot of people think that they have to figure out what they're going to be known for. Right? Like I need to find the thing. And exactly what you were saying, like perfectionism or people pleasing, like I need to find the thing that I can hang my hat on now and forever. And which is so ridiculous, especially if you actually identify as a creative, because whatever you create now is not the last thing you're going to create. Like it's just such a weird, like I've never met somebody who identifies as a creative who isn't constantly thinking of new ideas. So to think that whatever like you're creating now, you have to be known for that. That's just, it's ridiculous. It's not realistic if you consider yourself a creative. But what will stand the test of time, as opposed to what you're known for, is what you're known for activating. So for me, like I know that I activate joy or playfulness in people. It doesn't matter if I'm talking about coaching or building a business or about emotional intelligence or about leadership or whatever else. The butter in the pan, the foundational thing that I'm always going to bring to everything I do is making sure that I activate joy within people. And people, when they know they can count on you for a certain emotion, they will always come back to you. Like if I know that like I can always turn to Curb Your Enthusiasm if I want to laugh my butt off, and like I don't have to worry like, man, I really wish I could laugh right now. What do I do? It's like, no, I go watch a rerun of Curb and I feel great, right? So when people know what to count on from you, they will keep coming back to you over and over again to feel that thing. And then if whatever you have on offer, whatever you're selling, whatever your service or product is or whatever, if that is something they ever want to have, you are the only person they would ever get it from.
100%. And that's perfect segue, because I wanted to ask you about your what I would say your leading thing right now is really helping people make a business that is competition proof and being designed around you specifically and your unique talents and your unique strengths. And what I would love to know is, was that something that you consciously saw out there that you were like, this is the thing? Or was it like, not the thing that to hang your hat on, but like, was this the next thing you wanted to help people with? Or was it just sort of the byproduct of what you kept seeing? Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. And actually, I love that you asked this, because this is actually this is perfect to be talking about with creatives. So I posted a video yesterday. I think you may have seen it actually in the Facebook group about like the content creation stuff with me and Ajit.
Yep.
And I was talking about that, content creation is a creative act, right? The word creation is in content creation. And what I mean by that is that it's not an intellectual act. Right?
Yes.
You don't sit in a room in the dark and like all the inspiration in the world strikes. Now, sometimes it does, and you just get these epiphanies, but typically it's because you are doing things out in the world, and then you have something reflected to you. If you're open and primed to it, you have something reflected to you that could be of use to you or to somebody else in the world. And the funniest thing is that all of the content for the Competition Proof Business Program, or the vast majority of it, it's obviously evolved over time and we add stuff to it, but the bones of it was not an intellectual thing. I did we did this thing a couple times a year before last, and I want to do more of them because it was so fun. They were called PTG weekends, and PTG stood for Proximity to Greatness. Ooh. And what that meant was it was me and a group of 4 coaches, and they would come in and they would fly into Venice, into California. I would put them up in an Airbnb for the weekend, a gorgeous house in Venice. And then I would be with them all weekend, and it would be 4-on-1 coaching. So I would just coach them for the weekend, the 4 of us all together, and they could stay together and they build community and like amazing bonds. And it was amazing. We did it twice. It was so much fun, and we got to do more of it. But
I will come. Just saying.
It's just great. It's the best. So the second one of those that we did, the first one ended up being a lot more inner work, and you just never know who's going to show up, right? And
yep.
In the first group, it was like they didn't really give a crap about business. They wanted to do the inner stuff. And so it was 2 full days. We went like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 2 days.
Wow.
And it was so energizing for all of us. None of us were tired at the end of it. We could have gone longer.
Awesome.
And it was all inner work stuff. It was all deep stuff. The second time we did it, they wanted to focus a lot more on business. So they're asking questions and talking about stuff. And I start drawing these notes and like making up these models and drawing out kind of what I've done. And then Tanya and I sat back afterwards and we were looking at the flip chart pages and we're like, this kind of feels like what a lot of people are struggling with. And
totally.
And people were asking questions and I'm like, oh, we're probably going to spend 10 minutes on this thing. And we spent 2.5 hours on the one thing. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is actually much bigger of a struggle for people than I thought. And people were reflecting like, oh my God, this is like, I've never heard it explained this way. And this is so much more simple. And it actually feels in alignment and all these things. And so it was being out there in the world and doing the thing. Yep. Without any need for it to be anything more than what it was in the moment, that then gave me 90% of the input I needed to create the thing that is now 90% of the revenue in our business and keeps growing year over year. So it's a creative act.
It's a creative act. I love that. When I watched your video yesterday, I was dying because I just recorded an episode for the podcast that was, if you want to actually create more, just live more. Like, I was like, of course you posted this today. Of course you did. I just talked about this. It hasn't even been out yet. What is happening? But yes, that's it, right? It's like, if you because I think, I don't know how it is for you, but I think there is a lot of noise out there that says like, if you want this, you have to be committed. And I know your whole thing, what I love to talk about is being less serious, but you have to be committed. You have to do the work. You have to do the thing. And one thing I know for me that I've really had to do work around is managing my own expectation and my own agreement with myself when I see other people. And what I mean by that is like, Dave works, 12-hour days and he's in construction and he's on the job and he's doing a lot of work. And I had to unpack a lot of my own stories of like, well, if he's working 12 hours, then I should work 12 hours, right? Our environment can affect us in certain ways. And it's like, well, if my partner does this and if my parents do this, and I think especially as a creative, we have to tell ourselves the truth of like, what's the best way that I work? And I think our work comes through in the living, right? It's like, I don't get my best ideas sitting in front of my computer. I get my best ideas when I'm out with my kids or going on an adventure or being in the world. And like, I just think it's so important for us to recognize that this is a creative act to make content for our people, for our business, but it's not from sitting in front of the computer.
Right. It's huge. And what you mentioned so many things in there that are so important. there's so much to unpack there. But really, like, you nailed so many really important things there. And one of the things I'll say is that the attachment to what work looked like for our parents, or even for our spouses, like, but mainly I see this all the time with entrepreneurs who had either parents who were entrepreneurs or parents who had regular day jobs, is that what they saw was, if they had a day job, and I'm thinking about one client in particular who works his butt off, like works himself to the core, performs at a super high level, but doesn't need to work as hard to perform at that level. And when I asked where he got this model for working so hard, he realized it was his dad. His dad was a mechanic, and his dad had to work 12 hours a day to be able to bring in the money. And I said, but is your business a business where you're trading time for money? Is it the same paradigm? Do you make money the same way your dad made money? And he said, no. I said, so with your team, do you want them to work longer hours, or do you want them to be higher performing? So I want them to be higher performing. I said, so cool. So why are you holding yourself to a standard that you wouldn't hold your team to? And it all comes back to this origin of hard work, like my dad, is the way that you support your family, or the way you come. But that's just not the way it works anymore. So we have an outdated paradigm. It would be like saying that us believing that we need to work like our parents did, and in the same exact way. It doesn't mean you shouldn't put in hard work. I'm not an advocate. Sit on your couch and money just falls in your lap. I work and I like to work. But to think that we have to adhere to this old paradigm, and even for ourselves, once we become entrepreneurs, I used to work, 60, 70 hours a week in my corporate job. So even my own paradigm from my own history says you work a lot of hours, you work really hard. But to think that we have to adhere to that paradigm going forward would be like saying, since there were no iPhones available when I was 15, I shouldn't have an iPhone now.
Right. Totally.
It makes no sense, right?
No.
So I think being aware of where that paradigm comes from, and asking yourself, what business are you in? Are you in your mom and dad's business? Are you in your previous career? Like, what business are you in? That's the first thing I want to say. And the second thing I want to say that you didn't directly bring up, but as you were saying it, I was really thinking this, and I think it's really, really important, especially for creatives and especially for people who are doing stuff online. And I had a friend just post this on Instagram the other day, and it really resonated with me, is listen. There are people that you follow on Facebook and Instagram. Either they are your friends, they are your current or former mentors, or they are just people in the world that are ahead of you. If they trigger you, mute their shit.
Yes.
Stop reading their stuff. Stop following them. Stop spiritually bypassing and saying, no, I need to be able to see it. I need to be able to see it. And I need to be able to see them with Ferraris and not get triggered. No.
No, you don't. No.
Your creative energy is one of the most valuable things you have in your entire world. And every single time, like, imagine you wake up every day with 10 tokens in your hand, and each of those tokens can be used to feel or express a certain emotion. Do you want to use 8 out of those 10 tokens a day trying to work on not being triggered by somebody who pops up in your feed? No, screw them. Mute them and use all 10 of those to be of service, to be creative, and to have fun.
Oh my God, I love that so much. And yes, I couldn't agree more, especially with this like perfectionism and like comparison and like getting into like, oh, what are they doing? And should I do that too? And whatever. But I could not agree more. When people trigger you, it does not mean you like, yes, I think to some extent, maybe there's some medicine there for you on some level. Doesn't mean it needs to be all day, every day. No, like just know that's not your best self, right? That's not in service to you, your family, your clients. Please stop doing that. Please just mute that shit or unfollow them or whatever. Like just no.
Yeah, if I trigger you, mute me. It's fine. I don't care. It's okay. I mean, there are friends of mine who are in this industry that I just muted. Yeah. I love their content. I'm not muting people because they suck and they're salesy or sleazy.
Totally.
I wouldn't follow those people at all. There are people that I follow who I love, and I love their content. I love all this stuff. But one thing I heard one time that really resonated with me was somebody who was, I don't remember who it was. It was a major recording artist who said that when they go in the studio to record an album, they stop listening to all outside music.
Totally.
Because they don't want to be influenced. They don't want to feel bad about themselves. They don't want to have self-doubt. They don't want to have any of that stuff. So they just shut it all out. Doesn't mean they don't love all of these other artists that they would normally 100%. Listen to. But if it's not conducive to your creative process and the feeling the way you need to feel or the way you want to feel to create something of value in the world, get rid of it.
100%, which is perfect. Because the next thing I wanted to talk about was, we talked about like what's not in alignment. And a lot of the things I do talk about is being in alignment, and your energy has to be clean first and all of those things, which I also think is sort of a little bit of a buzzword these days, where it's like, alignment, whatever, good. But it's true, right? It's like, for me, alignment is, are your thoughts and your behaviors and your actions all conducive to the thing you're moving in the direction of, right? And that takes courage, and that takes a lot of strengthening that muscle and navigating the currents of fear. And that's what I do. Like, that's why we do this work, right? For myself and for people that we connect with. But my question is, do you have a creative practice other than just going out and living, right? Because I know for us, that's really where like we get our gold. But is there any kind of work, because I know how valuable it is, the process you bring us through, but for yourself in the program, is there anything that you do where you're like, I'm just not feeling it, but I do want to commit to this and this is in alignment? So like, how do you shift up your energy? Is there anything that you do personally?
Yeah. So for me, it's one of my best friends in the world, another coach, a guy named Amir Karkudi, who is just brilliant and I just love him to death. And he's also hilarious. And he's actually more inappropriate than I am, which is hard to do.
Come on.
When we get together, we can't have
Stop
anybody
it.
under 17 around because it's just not nice. So he had this thing one time that he talked about. He said, if I'm ever experiencing writer's block, it's because I've stopped consuming things that matter to me, right? And so for me, if I ever get into a place of like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to create, number one, get out in the world for sure. But number two, it becomes a matter of like, have I not been consuming things that actually touch my soul or things that really make me think and are thought provoking? So it's not about, and this is a slippery slope, we don't want to get into consumption only and then no creation. But if you have that in check, if we can agree that we're not using consumption as a built-in barrier to not be a creator, then a lot of times it's just that I haven't had my energy sparked. And so I did a live on this at some point, but there's 5 ways that I typically can come up with new ideas if I don't have something in front of me. Now I'll give you, actually maybe it's 6. So I'll give you kind of the 0.5 idea first. The 0.5 idea is to keep a swipe file. Right?
Totally.
Keep a file of all your ideas. And that way, if you're ever in a place where you have committed to creating something and you don't have something top of mind, you go to your swipe file, you have it there and you're good to go. For those of you who don't know what a swipe file is, very simple: notebook or a note on your phone or a Word document with all your ideas. Whenever they pop in your head, just throw them down. They don't have to be fully fleshed out. I will just write down blah, blah, blah. And I'll even write like, I'm not exactly sure what I even mean by this. This needs more work, but I still put it down. So it's there.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
That's the first one. But the other ways that I do this is, number one, I get coached, right? And anytime I get coached, I have insights, right?
Yep.
That's the coaching, right? So it's using the insights that I receive from being coached as a way to create something out in the world. The second way is to coach others, right? Whether it's an enrollment conversation or it's an actual like paid coaching client or a group coaching call, whatever it is, I get insights from coaching other people. And those insights can be ones that I take and then create from. Number 3, I go for a walk.
Yes, walking.
Go for a walk. I try to walk as much as possible. I just came back before this interview. I just came back.
Me too. I was at the beach.
Yeah. And it's so great, right? You get ideas, you get all this stuff. So definitely go for a walk. Number 4 is read, watch videos, do whatever, and ask yourself, what is it that you heard that was insightful that you can process through your own lens, right? So it becomes your own, right?
Totally.
So definitely reading. And then the last thing, and this one's a little more complex for here. It's not really complex, but just to kind of explain it, I'll explain it as quickly as possible. Something really fun if you're trying to create content is this thing that's called newsjacking. And newsjacking is a really, really cool thing. So I know it sounds like something your son would do. So it's like carjacking, but like you rob a newspaper.
Right. Yeah. Okay, good. I'll tell him.
Yeah. So newsjacking is essentially, you look at stories that are in the news, and you can look at like Huffington Post, or you can look at whatever your source of news is. You look for articles and things that are going on, and you ask yourself, where is there a lesson inside of here that I could use this news story as the backdrop for, right? It doesn't have to have anything to do with personal growth or whatever you do. And even if you're a creative and you're a photographer or you're whatever you're doing, you can find these news articles that will back up your beliefs about your industry or about your product or about your service. And so like there was one that and I'll just say it really quickly, but there was a story I saw about a woman who was calling the cops because she had opened up this beauty salon. And every day when she would go to open the salon, she would see a big pile of vomit in front of the front door.
I remember this live.
You remember? Yeah. And it was like, and it was this whole news story about like this like vomit bandit who was like vomiting in front of her thing all day. And there were so many lessons in that because I know what my lens is. I know what I teach. I know what I believe. I can't know for sure, but what I believe helps people to have a more optimized life, or a life where they feel like they're flourishing instead of struggling. And so since I know that lens, since I'm processing the world through that lens, I can read that article and I can see the part where she tells the cops that she's worried about the guy, that he's vomiting so much and his stomach is okay. And I see the gift of compassion.
Yep.
That she can be so angry and upset, but she has compassion. So that immediately becomes the thing where instead of me going on a Facebook Live and saying, guys, you should have compassion because we have no idea what people are dealing with. Yeah, that's true.
Sure.
And it doesn't really land because there's nothing to connect us at an empathetic human level. But when I shared this funny story so guys, I was reading this story, this crazy story about this salon, and there's the vomit bandit. And you know what her response was? It wasn't to say, I hate this guy. We need to find him and throw him in jail. I'm sick of people disrespecting my salon. She went directly to, I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
I hope there's nothing wrong with his insides. I hope that
Right.
once he's found, before they take him to jail, they take him to the hospital. So it's asking myself, where am I not practicing compassion and instead going into my ego and wanting somebody to be punished for the things they're doing instead of realizing that they're trying the best, they're doing the best they can. And if I viewed the world the way they viewed the world, I would throw up in front of her salon every morning as well. Right. And so all of a sudden that same message of be compassionate because you don't know what people are dealing with lands a lot more because there's a story behind it. And it wasn't even my story.
Totally.
So that's the fifth way, the newsjacking, which I said was going to be quick and it wasn't. So I'm sorry.
It's important. I loved it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. I think it's so good. And I love the way that you teach things that are loose enough that people can adapt it for their own, but it's just such an easy, simplified way. My brain works in simplified ways and I know yours does too. So that's why I love learning from you so much. So I love that you shared that. That's awesome. Thank you. On the heels of that, so helping people create a competition-proof business and really doing it their own way, are there ever times for you that you still find yourself falling into comparison or looking at what somebody else is doing?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry, please continue. I'm just laughing at the notion that I could ever not experience that. But please.
Well, I think it's you have it all figured out. So why would you ever compare yourself, right? Isn't that why you teach everyone not to have that kind of business?
Oh my God.
I know. I love us.
No,
I couldn't not ask you that because.
No, I'm glad you asked it. It's an important question to ask. And I think it is human nature. And maybe if you're Byron Katie, this doesn't affect you. Or maybe, if you're Eckhart Tolle, this doesn't affect you. But who knows? Maybe they're just cursing the crap out of each other behind
yeah, right.
I think it's natural from a place of ambition to look and see what else is possible. And I think it's also natural to compare yourself and worry that you're not enough, right? Because our ego has been trained from a very early age. From the time we're 0 to 7, we had some belief from some well-meaning parent or friend or teacher or family member that we're not enough. Yeah. And so we spend the entire rest of our adult years trying to undo the belief that we're not enough. Yeah. At least that's my own experience for me.
Same.
And so
I
think
fun.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's the funnest thing in the world. I love doing the work. I just want to do the work all day, every day, and never have any joy that's just natural. So yes, I still absolutely have those moments, and it's when I have to really slow down and look at what I've already done, what I've accomplished, because they've done studies on this, and there are two types of people. I mean, there's limitless types of people, but there's two types of people when it comes to looking at accomplishments. They're the ones who say, "Wow, look at all I've created." And there's the other ones that say, wow, there is so much more to do. Yeah. And they have found the parallel or the connection between people who are in the first camp being happier and less stressed, and the people in the second camp being much more anxious and heavier in the way they live their lives. Weird. So it's trying to find this kind of happy medium of wanting to be ambitious and grow while also really, really appreciating what it is you've already created. And I'll tell you, this happened to me less than a week, is maybe 3 or 4 days ago. I realized I was really, really caught up in something in my business, just really thinking about, again, metrics and all these outside things. And I realized that I was not appreciating what was working well in the business. Mm-hmm. And so I sat there, and as woo-woo as this is going to sound, and I know you'll be fine with it and your audience will too, is I opened up my Stripe account, right? And I was
so good.
Every single transaction, and I opened every single one and had a conversation with that transaction on behalf of the person who paid to say, thank you so much for trusting us to work with us. Thank you so much for trusting yourself to show up. And thank you for allowing me to do the work that I'm doing in the world. And I did that with every single minute. Thing, 10 minutes. Holy shit, business. You're going to be into gratitude and appreciation. Remember that there's other people on the other side of the screen or the other side of the couch or wherever you're doing your work. Couch, not a great.
Right. Got it.
I was thinking therapy, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, right. Whatever.
Whoever you're working with, yeah, there's a whole other soul over there. And the more we can appreciate that that soul is having their own thing that they're doing too, and that we're getting the gift of being able to facilitate whatever they're doing. And again, this doesn't matter if you're a coach or if you're a painter or if you're a photographer, there is something that you are doing that is being activated in other people. You're providing some kind of value. To really, really remember and to decide every single day that your work matters is such a beautiful way to combat feeling this comparisonitis with other people.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's so funny. I just said to a client yesterday that we were talking about like, oh, you know, how we want to manifest things, right? Like, oh, I want to manifest this or I want to manifest that or whatever. And that's great. And I said to her, but what if you are the manifestation for someone else? Right. And like, I think sometimes we forget that, like we get so caught up in like, what else can we do? And how else can we serve? And then it's the reminder of like, we are the answer to the prayers. Like we are the permission granters. We are the ones saying like, wow, you actually bet on yourself and asked me to come along. This is amazing. And I'm so grateful for that. So beautiful. I love that. I would totally do that. I actually have my people, when we're in the money programs that I do, I have them look at everything they've accumulated because so many people are stuck in like, I don't have enoughness, right? Or I'm not enough or whatever. And then it's like, no, you actually did all this already. Like, look at you, you know, in your whole life, look at all you've done, you know? So I think it's a great exercise. It's awesome.
I love it. It's great.
Yeah. And the other thing that I do, side note, is because I love walks, right? I'm always telling people to go for walks and leave your phones at home, unless you're listening to our podcast, then you can do that. And I make them walk backwards.
Ooh. Now, okay. Now what, it's like a brain connection synapse thing, or what's the purpose of that?
Sort of, but it's a perspective shift. But it's sort of like when you're close to the end of your walk, I tell my people that I want them to walk backwards because I want them to notice how far they've already come. Rather than looking at how far we still have to go.
I love that.
I think we forget to celebrate, like, look what you just did. You just did all that. You covered all that. You're done, right? So it's like we're constantly looking forward, and that's super important. And celebration's a big part of my work, and celebrating what you've already done is huge.
Yeah, I love that, Carrie. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just a little hack, right? It's like, oh yeah, I did it. Good on me. I showed up.
Good on you. Good on you.
Good on you. Yeah. Okay. I want to be respectful of your time. I have one last question for you before you tell us all the things of where people find you. What does it mean to you to be a confident creative?
Ooh, what does it mean to be a confident creative? I guess it's, for some reason, the first thing that comes up, the first word that popped in my mind when you said that was, or the first two words were resourceful and resilient. Right? Those two words popped up for me because being a confident creator for me, I don't need to be confident that I have it all figured out or that I'm the best or that I know it all, but I do need to be confident in my own resilience and resourcefulness so that if I get out there and I'm creating, that no matter what comes my way, I'll be able to handle it. I'll be able to shift. I'll be able to pivot. I'll be able to keep showing up. So for me, being confident in my abilities to bounce back, being confident in my abilities to remember that everything is figure outable, those kinds of things to me are what make me a confident creative.
I love it. I love it. And I think on the heels of that, a little distinction that I make for people when we're talking about that confidence is sometimes we've just built up the confidence in the things that we can't do. And it's not that we don't have any confidence at all. We just need to refocus where that confidence is. So the resiliency and the resourcefulness is such a beautiful reminder to be like, oh, and I just saw that I was focusing on the wrong side of confidence, right? Not wrong, bad, but just the less effective side of it, right? So I'm really confident that didn't work. Cool. I can be resourceful and pivot over here. So I love that. It's perfect.
That's awesome.
You're amazing. You're my favorite. I love you so much.
I love you.
So we're going to put in the show notes all your stuff, but is there anything you want to share where people can find you, your favorite place to hang out, all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me. I'm the Jason Goldberg, THE.
Yep.
I know I'm super pretentious.
You sure are.
But Jason Goldberg was taken, so I had to do the Jason Goldberg. So
I love it.
Instagram. I know it's whatever. So I have that, and then you'll have a link there. You guys can download my How to Build a Competition-Proof Business ebook, and I'm also going to give you guys all a free copy of my book Prison Break. So we'll give you a link for that, and you can get a free audio, digital, or if you're in the U.S., free paperback copy. You pay a couple bucks for shipping and handling, and we can get that out to you as well. So yeah, let's continue the conversation, and I'm just happy to be a part of everybody's world here.
You're so amazing. You're so generous. I love it so much. Thank you for being here and sharing your time and your energy and your heart. It's just so beautiful. I'm so grateful. So thank you.
Love you, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
Love you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Confident Creative podcast. I am so psyched that I got to have this conversation, and I loved sharing it with you. If you enjoyed it, I would love for you to hit subscribe to the podcast, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you could go ahead and leave a review about what your biggest takeaway was. If you want to come over and continue the conversation, join us in my free Facebook community, the Confident Creative Collective. We'll be diving into all different conversations from the podcast, as well as some additional trainings and some inside scoop. If you want to find me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram at Keri.Gavin, KERI.GAVIN, or you can find me on Facebook. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you, and thank you for sharing this with anyone you think it resonates with. See you on the next episode.